Aliens requested help, but summoned the Deathworlder fleet instead. Part 1. The Distress Signal. The Velari had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They were a peaceful species with soft blue skin and large dark eyes that could see colors no other species could imagine. Their bodies were thin and delicate, built for a gentle world with low gravity and calm weather. They had never known war until the Krath came. Ambassador Lyra stood in the command center of the last Velari battle station. Through the massive window, she could see her homeworld burning. Orange flames spread across the continents like a disease. The Krath swarm covered the sky, millions of dark ships blocking out the sun. "We have lost contact with the southern cities," said her assistant, his voice shaking. "The Krath are consuming everything. People, animals, plants, nothing survives." Lyra closed her eyes. She was 300 years old, ancient even by Velari standards. She had seen her civilization grow and prosper. Now she was watching it die. The Krath had appeared from the darkness between galaxies just 10 years ago. No one knew where they came from. They were not a species that could be reasoned with or negotiated with. They were hunger given form. Their ships were alive, grown from organic material, and they needed to feed constantly. They moved from world to world, eating everything alive, then moving on to the next meal. 47 civilizations had fallen to the Krath. The Velari were next. "Ambassador," said a young officer, "the High Council is requesting your presence. They want to discuss surrender terms." "There are no surrender terms with the Krath," Lyra said quietly. "They do not take prisoners, they do not make deals, they only eat." She walked away from the window and made her way through the station. Velari refugees filled every corridor, families holding each other, children crying for parents who would never come back. Lyra had failed them all. But there was one option left, one terrible, desperate option. Deep in the station's oldest section, there was a room that had been sealed for 10,000 years. Inside was a relic from the precursors, the ancient species that had ruled the galaxy before disappearing without a trace. The relic was a beacon, and according to precursor records, it could summon warriors from a quarantined world. The High Council had forbidden anyone from using it. The records were clear about the world the beacon would contact. It was marked in every ancient star chart with the same warning, Class 12 Deathworld, extremely dangerous. Do not approach under any circumstances. Lyra entered the sealed room. The beacon sat on a pedestal in the center, a simple metal sphere covered in symbols no one could read. She placed her hand on it. "Forgive me," she whispered. Then she activated it. The beacon hummed to life. Light pulsed from its surface, and somewhere across the galaxy, a signal began its journey through the stars. On the planet called Earth, in a solar system at the edge of the Milky Way, Admiral Park Tiho was drinking coffee in his office when the alarm sounded. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face marked by scars from decades of war. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion, the Europa Campaign, and the Titan Uprising. He had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. "Admiral, you need to see this," said Commander Kim Yuna as she rushed into his office. She was his chief science officer, a brilliant woman in her 40s who rarely showed emotion. But right now, her eyes were wide with shock. Tiho followed her to the communications center. On the main screen was a message unlike anything humanity had ever received. It was not from any human colony. It was from outside their solar system, from aliens. "We decoded it about 10 minutes ago," Yuna said. "It is a distress call. Someone out there is asking for help." Tiho studied the message. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. A species called the Velari was under attack. They were facing extinction, and they had activated an ancient beacon specifically designed to reach Earth. "Why us?" Tiho asked. "How do they even know we exist?" Yuna pulled up more data. According to the beacon's information, Earth was marked as a death world by some ancient species thousands of years ago. The beacon was created to summon warriors from dangerous worlds in case of emergency. Sir, they think we are some kind of protector species. T-Ho was quiet for a long moment. Humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They had never met aliens before. They did not even know aliens existed until this moment. And now, out there in the darkness, someone was dying and asking for help. How far away are they? T-Ho asked. 3 weeks at maximum speed, Yuna replied. But sir, we know nothing about these aliens. We know nothing about the enemy they are facing. This could be a trap. It is not a trap, T-Ho said. He did not know how he knew, but he was certain. There was real desperation in that message, real fear, real hope. He made his decision. Contact all fleet commanders. I want the first fleet assembled within 48 hours. All 12 carriers, all support vessels, full combat readiness. Yuna stared at him. Sir, you want to send our entire first fleet into unknown space based on a single message. Someone asked for help, Commander. Where I come from, that means something. Within hours, the news spread across Earth and all human colonies. Aliens were real, they were in trouble, and humanity was going to help. Not everyone agreed with the decision. Politicians argued that Earth should not risk its military for unknown species. Scientists warned that first contact should be handled carefully, not with warships. Religious leaders debated what aliens meant for their faiths. But the soldiers did not argue, they prepared. Sergeant Han Diwu was loading supplies onto the carrier Eternal when he heard the news. He was a big man with rough hands and kind eyes. He had been a soldier for 20 years, and he had learned one simple truth. When someone was in trouble, you helped them. That was what good people did. You think these aliens are really out there? Asked Private Shin Boram, a 19-year-old girl from Busan who had just finished training. The message is real, Diwu said. That is all I need to know. What if they are dangerous? Diwu smiled. Kid, we come from Earth. We are the dangerous ones. 3 days later, the first fleet launched. 12 massive carriers, each one carrying thousands of soldiers and hundreds of smaller attack ships. Behind them came supply vessels, medical ships, and engineering frigates. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Admiral T-Ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Unbreakable as they entered hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines of light, and then they were gone, racing toward a distant part of the galaxy where a dying species waited for salvation. Ambassador Lyra did not know what she had summoned. She hoped for protectors, for guardians, for gentle warriors who would save her people with minimal violence. She had no idea that she had just woken the wolves. The humans were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. Aliens requested help, but summoned the Deathworlder fleet instead. Part 2, First Contact. Ambassador Lyra had waited 3 weeks for a response to the beacon. 3 weeks of watching her people die. 3 weeks of hoping that something, anything, would come to save them. The Velari fleet had been reduced to just 50 ships. They orbited their colony world of Sanctuary Prime, watching helplessly as the Krath consumed everything below. The surface that had once been green with forests and blue with oceans was now brown and dead. Billions of Velari had lived there. Now there was nothing but Krath. Ambassador, said Captain Vorn, commander of the last Velari battleship, our shields are at 20%. We cannot hold much longer. Lyra nodded slowly. The Krath ships surrounded them like a cloud of hungry insects. There were thousands of them, each one dark and organic, with sharp edges that looked like teeth. They had stopped attacking for now, but they were waiting. They knew the Velari had nowhere to run. Perhaps, Lyra said quietly, the beacon failed. Perhaps no one is coming. Then the sensors screamed. Something massive was exiting hyperspace. Not one ship, many ships. The Velari officers stared at their screens in shock as vessel after vessel appeared out of nowhere. 12 enormous carriers, each one larger than any ship the Velari had ever built. Hundreds of smaller craft poured from their hangars like angry insects. "What is that?" Captain Vorn whispered. Lyra's hearts were pounding. She had never seen ships like these. They were not graceful like Velari vessels. They were brutal, covered in armor and weapons that made her sensors display warning after warning. These were not ships built for exploration or trade. These were ships built for one purpose only: war. A transmission came through. Lyra activated the translator and heard a voice speak in a language she had never heard before. The translation was rough, but she understood. "This is Admiral Park Tiho of the United Terran Navy. We received your distress call. We are here to help." Lyra tried to respond, but her voice caught in her throat. Tears ran down her blue face. Someone had actually come. On the bridge of the Unbreakable, Admiral Tiho studied the scene before him. The alien fleet was tiny and damaged. Below them, a planet was dying. And surrounding everything were thousands of enemy ships, dark and wrong-looking in a way that made his stomach turn. "Reports," he ordered. Commander Kim Yuna worked her console. The friendly aliens matched the description from the beacon. "Velari, the hostiles are different, organic ships. I am reading billions of life signs on each vessel. They appear to be some kind of swarm species." "What are they doing to that planet?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. "Eating it, sir. They are consuming all organic matter. The planet is almost completely dead." Tiho felt cold anger rise in his chest. He had seen many terrible things in his long career, but this was different. This was not war. This was slaughter. "Open a channel to the Velari," he said. "Tell them to get behind our lines. Then tell all ships to prepare for combat." Captain Cho Sungmi commanded the destroyer Indomitable. She was 40 years old with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had earned her rank in the frozen battlefields of Titan, where she had lost half her unit and still completed the mission. She did not know fear, but looking at the Krath swarm, she felt something close to it. "Orders from the Admiral," her communications officer announced. "We are cleared to engage." Sungmi smiled grimly. Finally, all hands battle stations, weapons free. The Indomitable surged forward, followed by the rest of the destroyer squadron. The Krath ships turned to face them, thousands of organic vessels moving like a single organism. The first Krath ship fired. A beam of purple energy struck the Indomitable's shields, but the human ship barely slowed. Lieutenant Beek Jinho, the tactical officer, returned fire with kinetic cannons, sending solid metal slugs at impossible speeds toward the enemy. The Krath ship exploded. Across the battlefield, the same scene repeated itself. The Velari had fought the Krath with focused light weapons, elegant and precise. Those weapons did nothing against Krath organic armor, but human weapons were different. Humanity had spent thousands of years learning how to kill things. They had invented guns, bombs, missiles, and worse. They had turned destruction into a science. Now they used that science against the Krath. Kinetic rounds tore through organic hulls. Missiles exploded inside enemy ships. Human fighters dove into the swarm like wolves among sheep, firing constantly, never stopping. The Krath did not know how to respond. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Admiral Tiho watched the battle from his flagship. "Status report." "We have destroyed approximately 300 enemy vessels," Commander Yuna reported. "Our losses are 0, sir." 0, against a swarm that had destroyed 47 civilizations. But Tiho did not celebrate. He could see the Krath adapting, learning, changing their tactics. They were not mindless. Something intelligent was controlling them. "The planet," he said. "Can we save anyone down there?" Yuna checked her readings. "There are Velari survivors in the northern mountains, approximately 50,000, but the Krath are moving toward them." Tiho made his decision instantly. Captain Cho, I am sending you coordinates. There are civilians down there. Get them out. Captain Cho received the orders and felt her heart race. A ground mission in hostile territory against an unknown enemy to save alien civilians she had never met. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly what she had trained for. All Marines prepare for drop, she announced. We are going in. 30 minutes later, 100 human dropships screamed through the atmosphere of Sanctuary Prime. The craft tried to stop them, but human point defense systems shot down everything that got close. The dropships hit the ground hard near the mountain caves where the Velari survivors were hiding. Captain Cho was first out of her dropship. The air was toxic, filled with smoke and the smell of death. Her suit sealed automatically, protecting her from the environment that would kill most species in seconds. Move out, she ordered. Find the survivors. Her Marines advanced through the dead landscape. Trees that had once been tall and beautiful were now black and rotting. The ground was covered with ash, and everywhere there were krath. The creatures were horrifying up close. Each one was the size of a large dog, with too many legs and mouths that never stopped moving. They came in waves, thousands of them pouring over the hills like a living flood. The Marines opened fire. Private Shinboram had never killed anything before today. Now she was firing her rifle non-stop, watching krath bodies pile up in front of her. She was terrified, but she did not run. She thought about the civilians they were here to save, aliens she had never met who were counting on her. She kept shooting. Sergeant Han Diwu fought beside her, his heavy weapon tearing through the swarm. "Keep moving," he shouted. "Do not stop for anything." They pushed forward through the endless enemy, losing soldiers along the way but never retreating. When they finally reached the caves, they found the Velari survivors huddled in the darkness, thin and terrified and certain they were about to die. Then they saw the humans. The Velari had never seen beings like this before. These creatures were tall and solid, covered in armor that was scratched and burned from combat. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their movements were confident and strong. They did not act like prey. They acted like predators. "Everyone stay calm," Captain Cho said through her translator. "We are here to take you somewhere safe." A young Velari child stepped forward, looking up at the massive human with wide, dark eyes. "Are you the protectors?" she asked. "The ones the beacon called?" Cho did not know how to answer that. She did not feel like a protector. She felt like a soldier doing her job. But she knelt down to look at the child and said, "Yes, we are, and no one is going to hurt you anymore." It took 4 hours to evacuate all the survivors. 4 hours of constant fighting, constant movement, constant death. 17 human soldiers died protecting aliens they had never met. Their names would later be carved on monuments across the galaxy. When the last dropship left Sanctuary Prime, Captain Cho looked down at the dead world below. The krath had won this planet, but they had paid a price for it. And the humans were just getting started. In orbit, Admiral Tiho met with Ambassador Lyra for the first time. The Velari elder was shaking, overwhelmed by everything she had witnessed. These beings from the quarantined world had done more in one day than her entire fleet had done in 10 years. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you come? You do not know us. You owe us nothing." Tiho was quiet for a moment. "Because you asked for help," he finally said. "Where we come from, that is enough." Lyra did not understand. In her experience, no species did anything without expecting something in return. But these humans seemed genuinely confused by the question. Perhaps, she thought, the Deathworlders were more alien than any species she had ever encountered. Alien in the best possible way. Aliens requested help, but summoned the Deathworlder fleet instead. Part 3, The Nature of Wolves. After the Battle of Sanctuary Prime, the Velari fleet retreated to a space station far from the front lines. The human fleet came with them, and for the first time, two species that had never known each other began to learn. Dr. Yoon Hana was the chief medical officer on the flagship Unbreakable. She was a small woman with gentle hands and a warm smile. She had joined the military because she wanted to help people, not because she wanted to fight. Now she found herself examining Velari patients who looked at her with a mixture of fear and wonder. "Please," said the Velari researcher assigned to work with her, "we must understand your biology. Your species is unlike anything we have ever recorded." Hana agreed to let them study her, as long as she could study them in return. What they discovered shocked both sides. The Velari were fragile by human standards. Their bodies were built for a perfect world with no predators, no harsh weather, and no disease. They could not survive high gravity. They could not survive extreme temperatures. If their bodies were damaged beyond 40%, they simply died. They had no ability to heal themselves. Humans, on the other hand, were designed for survival. "Your bones," the Velari researcher said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They can break and then repair themselves." Hana nodded. "It takes a few weeks, but yes, our bodies fix most damage automatically." "And this scar on your arm? I got that when I was 12. Fell off my bicycle and cut myself on a rock." The researcher stared at the old wound. "Your body sealed the injury on its own, without medical intervention." "I mean, my mom put a bandage on it, but basically, yes." The Velari looked like he might faint. Among his species, a wound that deep would require emergency surgery and advanced medical technology. Without it, they would simply bleed to death. "Your world," he said slowly, "what is it like?" Hana thought about Earth. She thought about the oceans that could drown you, the mountains that could freeze you, the deserts that could burn you. She thought about sharks and tigers and mosquitoes that carried deadly diseases. She thought about hurricanes and earthquakes and volcanoes. "It is beautiful," she said, "but it is also very dangerous. Everything on our world is trying to kill us, including our world itself." "How did you survive?" Hana smiled. "We adapted. We became stronger, faster, smarter. We learned to use tools. We learned to work together. And when something threatened us, we learned to fight back." In another part of the station, Sergeant Han Diwu was sharing a meal with a group of Velari soldiers. They had survived the evacuation of Sanctuary Prime together, and they had formed a strange bond during those terrible hours. The Velari watched him eat with wide eyes. Human food was too harsh for their delicate systems. The protein bars Diwu was chewing would poison them if they tried to eat one. "Is it true," one of them asked, "that your world has animals that hunt you, that you are not the top predator?" Diwu laughed. "We have sharks that can bite you in half. We have snakes whose venom can kill you in minutes. We have insects that spread diseases that have wiped out millions of people. And our own history, we have spent most of it fighting each other." The Velari exchanged nervous glances. "Fighting each other? Why?" "Lots of reasons. Territory, resources, beliefs, sometimes no good reason at all." Diwu shrugged. "We are not proud of it, but it made us what we are. We have been at war for 100,000 years. We are very, very good at it." A young Velari soldier named Taurus leaned forward. "Then why did you come to help us? If your species is so violent, why not simply conquer us instead?" It was a fair question. Diwu put down his food and thought about how to answer. "Because violence without purpose is just cruelty," he finally said. "We fight when we have to, but we do not fight because we enjoy it. Most humans, anyway. When we heard your distress call, we did not think about what we could gain from helping you. We just thought about the people who were dying, and we decided that was wrong." Taurus did not understand. In his experience, power was always used to take from the weak. The idea that a powerful species would use its strength to protect strangers was completely foreign to him. "You are very strange aliens," he said. Diwu grinned. "We get that a lot." While the soldiers talked, Admiral Park Tiho met with the Velari High Council. The council chamber was beautiful, filled with light and delicate artwork that seemed to float in the air. The council members sat on raised platforms, looking down at the human admiral with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "We cannot thank you enough," said Elder Mora, the leader of the council. "You have done more for us in one day than we could do for ourselves in 10 years. Please tell us what you want in return. Technology, resources, we will give you anything." Tiho shook his head. "We did not come for payment." The council members looked confused. "Then why? No species acts without expecting something in return." "Maybe that is how things work in this part of the galaxy," Tiho said. "But where we come from, we have a different idea. When someone is in trouble, you help them. When someone is being hurt, you stop it. Not because you expect a reward, but because it is the right thing to do." Elder Mora stared at him for a long moment. "You truly believe this, your entire species?" "Most of us. We are not perfect. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history, but we are trying to be better. And when we saw your people dying, we knew we had to act." There was silence in the council chamber. The Velari had met dozens of species over their long history. Some were peaceful, some were aggressive, some were strange beyond understanding. But they had never met a species quite like this. Ambassador Lyra, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "You called them Deathworlders," she said to her fellow council members. "You thought that meant they were monsters, but perhaps it means something else. Perhaps surviving on a world that constantly tries to kill you teaches you to value life more, not less." Tiho nodded slowly. "We know how fragile life is. We know how easily it can be taken away. That is why we protect it when we can." Over the following weeks, humans and Velari began to work together. Human engineers studied Velari technology, amazed by their advanced shields and communication systems. Velari scientists studied human weapons, horrified by their destructive power but grateful for their effectiveness. Private Shin Boram, the young soldier who had survived her first battle on Sanctuary Prime, spent her free time with Velari children who had lost their parents in the invasion. She did not speak their language well, but she learned to play their games and tell them stories about Earth. The children loved her. They called her the Giant Guardian. Captain Cho Sungmi trained Velari soldiers in human combat tactics. It was difficult work. The Velari were not built for close combat. Their bodies were too fragile, their reflexes too slow, but they wanted to learn, and Cho respected that. "You cannot fight like us," she told them honestly. "Your bodies will not allow it, but you can learn to think like us. Strategy, planning, knowing when to attack and when to retreat. These things do not require strength. They require intelligence." One Velari soldier, a female named Kira, asked a question that had been bothering her. "The humans who died saving our people on Sanctuary Prime, do you mourn them?" Cho was quiet for a moment. "Every single one. They were my brothers and sisters. I knew their names, their families, their dreams. Losing them hurts more than I can describe." "Yet you still fight, you still risk death." "Because some things are worth dying for," Cho said simply. "Protecting innocent people is one of those things." The Velari did not have a concept like this. When one of their kind died, the others mourned and moved on. The idea of deliberately risking death for others was strange and terrifying to them. But it was also beautiful. As the days passed, the alliance between humans and Velari grew stronger. Word began to spread through the galaxy. The quarantined world, the death world that everyone feared, had sent its warriors to fight the Krath. And those warriors were not the monsters everyone expected. They were protectors, guardians. They were dangerous, yes, but they used their danger to help others. Other species began to pay attention. Some were hopeful that the humans could defeat the Krath where everyone else had failed. Others were afraid that humanity would become the next great threat to the galaxy. Admiral Tiho did not care about galactic politics. He had a mission to complete. The Krath were still out there, still consuming worlds, still killing innocent species. And humanity had only just begun to fight. Aliens requested help, but summoned the Deathworlder fleet instead. Part 4, The Swarm Learns Fear. The Krath had existed for 1 million years. They had consumed 300 worlds and destroyed 47 civilizations. In all that time, they had never known defeat. They did not understand the concept of retreat. They were hunger given form, and hunger never stopped. Until the humans came. 6 months after the Battle of Sanctuary Prime, the war had spread across an entire sector of the galaxy. Human fleets struck Krath positions without warning, destroying their ships and liberating planets that had been marked for consumption. The Krath fought back with everything they had, but nothing they did seemed to work against these strange creatures from the quarantined world. Fleet Commander O'Kainam stood on the bridge of his carrier, the Relentless, studying the holographic map of the battlefield. He was 52 years old, a veteran of a dozen human wars who had thought he had seen everything. The Krath had taught him that the universe was bigger and more terrible than he had imagined. "Status report," he ordered. Lieutenant Commander On Yunjai, his second in command, pulled up the data. "Our scouts have located the Krath staging ground. It is a hollowed-out moon they use to breed their invasion forces. If we destroy it, we cut their ability to reinforce this sector by half." Kainam studied the images. The moon was massive, covered with organic structures that pulsed with life. Sensors detected billions of Krath inside, growing new soldiers and ships for the endless war. Defenses. Heavy, approximately 5,000 ships in orbit. The moon itself has natural defenses, organic weapons that can shoot down anything that gets close, and the tunnels inside are filled with drones, billions of them. What is our survival probability? Yunjai checked her calculations. Command estimates 12%. Kainam nodded slowly. 12%. That meant most of his soldiers would die. It was a price he did not want to pay. But if they destroyed this moon, they would save millions of lives on the planets the Krath were planning to attack next. "Better than Europa," Yunjai said quietly, echoing a joke that had spread through the military. The Europa campaign had been one of humanity's bloodiest wars, fought in frozen tunnels under an ice moon with survival odds of just 8%. The veterans who survived it had become legends. Kainam made his decision. "All ships prepare for assault. We drop in 6 hours." The attack began at dawn, though there was no dawn in space. Human ships emerged from hyperspace in a coordinated wave, immediately engaging the Krath defenders. The battle in orbit was fierce, but it was just a distraction. The real mission was on the surface. 10,000 Marines loaded into drop pods. They knew most of them would not come back, but none of them hesitated. They had all seen what the Krath did to planets. They had all seen the corpses of species that could not fight back. They would rather die than let that continue. Private Shin Boram was in the third wave. She was 20 years old now, no longer the terrified girl she had been at Sanctuary Prime. She had fought in 6 major battles since then. She had killed hundreds of Krath. She had lost friends she loved like family. War had changed her. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced. Boram checked her rifle one more time. Beside her, Sergeant Di-Wu gave her a nod. They had been through a lot together. If this was the end, at least they would face it side by side. The drop pods launched. Falling toward the moon was like falling into a nightmare. The organic surface rose up to meet them, covered with structures that looked like bones and teeth and things that should not exist. Anti-air fire filled the sky with purple death, and Boram watched pods around her explode, her brothers and sisters dying before they even reached the ground. But enough pods made it through. Boram hit the surface hard, the pod's cushioning system absorbing most of the impact. She kicked the door open and climbed out into hell. The atmosphere was toxic. Without her sealed suit, she would be dead in seconds. The ground was spongy, made of organic material that seemed to move under her feet, and everywhere she looked there were Krath. "Form up," Diwu shouted. "Head for the tunnel entrance." The Marines fought their way across the surface, leaving a trail of Krath bodies behind them. Their weapons tore through the swarm, but there were always more. For every Krath they killed, 10 more took its place. They reached the tunnel entrance and pushed inside. The tunnels were dark, lit only by bioluminescent growths on the walls. The air was worse here, filled with spores and chemicals that made Boram's suit work overtime to keep her alive. "Keep moving," Diwu ordered. "We stop, we die." They fought through tunnel after tunnel, losing soldiers at every turn. The Krath came at them from all directions, from the walls, from the ceiling, from holes that opened without warning. It was a nightmare that never ended. Hours passed. Boram lost track of time. Her rifle overheated and failed, so she switched to her sidearm. When that ran out of ammunition, she drew her combat knife. At some point, she got separated from her unit. The tunnels all looked the same, and she made a wrong turn while retreating from a swarm. When she realized she was alone, she felt fear for the first time since the battle began. But she did not panic. She remembered her training. She found a defensible position, a small cave with only one entrance, and she waited. The Krath came. Boram fought them with her knife. She was 19 years old, barely 160 centimeters tall, and she faced creatures that had consumed entire civilizations. She should have died in seconds. Instead, she killed 47 of them. When the rescue team finally found her, she was sitting on a pile of Krath corpses, humming a folk song her grandmother had taught her when she was a child. Her suit was torn, her body was covered in cuts and bruises, and her knife was so covered in Krath blood that it was hard to see the blade. "Private Shin," the rescue team leader said, his voice filled with shock. "Are you okay?" Boram looked up at him. Her eyes were distant, but her voice was steady. "I ran out of bullets, had to improvise." She would later receive the highest military honor humanity could give. She would be called a hero, a legend, a symbol of human determination. But in that moment, she was just a tired soldier who wanted to go home. Deep in the heart of the moon, Commander Kainam led the final assault on the breeding chambers. They had lost more than half their forces getting this far. The survivors were exhausted, wounded, and running low on ammunition. But they had made it. "Plant the charges," Kainam ordered. 5-minute timer. The fusion bombs were small but powerful. When they exploded, they would destroy the moon from the inside out. There would be no escape for the Krath here, and no way to rebuild what they had lost. As the timer started, something strange happened. The Krath stopped attacking. They pulled back, watching the humans with what almost looked like confusion. They had never seen prey that fought this hard. They had never seen prey that walked willingly into death. Then, for the first time in a million years, the Krath hivemind experienced something new. It took them several minutes to identify the sensation, because they had never felt it before. It was fear. "Fall back to extraction," Kainam shouted. "Move, move, move." The survivors ran. Behind them, the fusion charges began their countdown. The Krath, finally understanding what was happening, tried to stop them, but it was too late. The humans made it to their dropships. They launched into space just as the moon began to shake. Then the fusion charges detonated, and the breeding ground of the Krath exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. From orbit, the human fleet watched the moon die. Billions of Krath died with it, along with their ability to reinforce this sector. It was a victory, but it had cost them dearly. More than 6,000 soldiers had not come back. Commander Kainam stood on the bridge of the Relentless, staring at the debris field that had once been a moon. He thought about the soldiers he had lost. He thought about their names, their faces, their families who would never see them again. "Sir," Yunjai said quietly, We are receiving a transmission. It is from the Krath. Kainam frowned. The Krath had never communicated before. They did not negotiate. They did not surrender. They only consumed. Put it through. The transmission was not a demand or a threat. It was a question, simple and confused. What are you? Kainam did not answer. He let Admiral Tiho respond instead, broadcasting on every frequency so that every Krath in the galaxy would hear. We are humanity. We are the children of Earth, and you made a mistake when you hurt our friends. The message spread through the Krath hive mind like poison. They had consumed 300 worlds. They had destroyed 47 civilizations, but they had never faced anything like this. These creatures from the quarantined world did not run. They did not surrender. They fought to the death for species they had never met. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the Krath knew fear. And they knew that the humans were not finished with them yet. Aliens requested help, but summoned the Deathworlder fleet instead. Part 5, The Galaxy Awakens. The war lasted 3 more years. After the destruction of the breeding moon, the Krath changed their tactics. They became more careful, more defensive. They stopped expanding and started consolidating their forces. For a species that had known nothing but endless hunger and conquest for 1,000,000 years, it was a revolutionary shift. But the humans did not let them rest. Admiral Park Tiho, now commanding the largest multi-species fleet in galactic history, led campaign after campaign against Krath territory. Other species had joined the fight after seeing what the humans could do. The crystalline Dorani sent their geometric warships. The ancient Methkai shared their advanced sensors. Even the peaceful Velari trained new soldiers using human tactics. The Krath were pushed back, system by system, world by world. For the first time in their existence, they experienced something they had never known: loss. Captain Cho Sungmi, now promoted to admiral, commanded the fleet that liberated the Vex homeworld. The Vex had been cattle for the Krath for 300 years, their population harvested like crops whenever the swarm needed food. When human soldiers landed on their planet and told them they were free, the Vex did not believe it. They thought it was a trick. Then they saw the human ships destroying the Krath orbitals, and they began to cry. On the surface, Sergeant Han Diwu helped organize the evacuation of Vex survivors. Many of them had never seen sunlight. They had lived underground their entire lives, hiding from the Krath harvesters. When Diwu led them outside for the first time, they stared at the sky with wonder and terror. A young Vex, no older than a human child, tugged at Diwu's arm. "Will the monsters come back?" she asked through the translator. Diwu knelt down to look at her. "Not while we are here," he said, "and we are not leaving." The final assault on the Krath homeworld began on a cold morning in January, 3 years and 4 months after the first distress signal reached Earth. The human fleet had grown to include ships from 16 different species. They outnumbered the Krath defenders 3-1, but no one expected an easy victory. The Krath homeworld was their last stronghold, and they would fight to the end. Admiral Cho Sungmi led the space battle from her flagship, the Unyielding. She had changed in the years since the war began. Her eyes were harder, her voice colder. She had lost too many friends to feel anything but grim determination. "All ships begin attack runs," she ordered. "Priority targets are the orbital defense platforms." The battle was apocalyptic. The Krath threw everything they had at the Allied fleet: billions of drones, weapons that warped space itself, tactics born from consuming countless civilizations. Ships exploded on both sides. Debris filled the space between the fleets. Captain Moon Yi-young led the fighter squadron nicknamed Ghost Wings. They were the best pilots in the fleet, known for maneuvers that should have been impossible. Yi-young was 35, calm and precise, with hands that never shook no matter how bad things got. "Ghost Wings, form up on me," he transmitted. "We are going for the command ship." His squadron dove through the chaos of battle, dodging fire that would have destroyed larger vessels. They lost 3 pilots in the first minute, 5 more in the second. By the time they reached the Krath command ship, only Yi Young and 2 others remained. But it was enough. Their missiles struck the command ship's core, triggering a chain reaction that tore the vessel apart. Without central coordination, the Krath defenders fell into confusion. The Allied fleet pushed through their lines and reached the planet itself. On the surface, General Kwon So-young commanded the ground forces. She was a legend among human soldiers, a woman who had fought in every major battle of the war and never lost. Her Marines called her Iron So-young because nothing seemed to hurt her. Landing zones are hot, her officers reported. Heavy resistance everywhere. So-young studied the tactical display. The Krath homeworld was covered with hives, massive organic structures where the queens lived. Kill the queens, and the drones would become mindless. It was the only way to win without destroying the entire planet. All units advance on primary targets, she ordered. No retreat, no surrender. The ground war lasted 4 days. Humans and their allies fought through endless waves of Krath drones, pushing deeper into the hives with every hour. Private Shin Bo-ram, now a decorated lieutenant, led her platoon through tunnels that seemed to go on forever. She was 23 now. She had lost count of how many battles she had fought, how many friends she had buried, how many Krath she had killed. The war had taken everything from her except her determination to see it through to the end. In the deepest chamber of the largest hive, they found the last queen. She was massive, larger than any Krath they had ever seen. Her body filled the entire chamber, connected to the hive by thousands of organic tubes. She was the heart of the swarm, the mind that controlled billions of drones across the galaxy. And she was dying. The queen looked at Bo-ram with eyes that held something close to intelligence. For a moment, human and Krath stared at each other across millions of years of evolution and countless light-years of space. "Why?" the queen asked through a voice that emerged from the walls themselves. "Why do you fight so hard for species that are not your own?" Bo-ram thought about the question. She thought about the Velari children she had played with after Sanctuary Prime. She thought about the Vex girl who had asked if the monsters would come back. She thought about all the people who had died in this war, human and alien alike. "Because they needed help," she said, "and we could give it." The queen was silent for a long moment. "We do not understand. You gain nothing from this sacrifice." "We gain friends," Bo-ram said. "We gain a galaxy where people can live without fear. That is worth dying for." The queen's eyes dimmed. "Perhaps," she said, "we consumed the wrong species." Then she died, and the Krath swarm went silent. Across the galaxy, billions of Krath drones stopped moving. Without the queens to control them, they became nothing but empty shells. The war was over. In the days that followed, the galaxy tried to understand what had happened. A species from a quarantined Deathworld had emerged from isolation, answered a desperate call for help, and defeated the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. They had asked for nothing in return. Representatives from 40 species gathered on the Velari homeworld for a ceremony honoring the human sacrifice. Admiral Park Ti-ho, old and tired after years of war, stood before them. He had lost friends, soldiers, and pieces of his own soul in the long campaign. But looking at the faces of all these different species, finally free from the Krath threat, he knew it had been worth it. "We did not come to conquer," he said, his voice carrying across the assembly. "We did not come for glory or territory. We came because someone asked for help, and where we come from on our dangerous little world, that means something." Ambassador Lyra, who had aged decades since their first meeting but whose eyes now held hope instead of despair, stepped forward. "You called yourselves dangerous. You called your world a place of death. But we have learned that danger can be a gift when used to protect others. You are not the monsters the old records warned about. You are guardians." Tiho shook his head. We are just humans, we make mistakes, we fight with each other, we are far from perfect, but we try to be better, we try to help when we can. That is all any of us can do. The ceremony ended, but the relationships it represented were just beginning. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or rulers, but as protectors. The death world that everyone feared had produced a species that would fight and die for strangers. In the years that followed, human embassies opened on hundreds of worlds. Human doctors helped heal species they had never met. Human engineers helped rebuild civilizations the Krath had nearly destroyed. And human soldiers stood guard at the edges of known space, watching for the next threat that might emerge from the darkness. Lieutenant Shin Boram retired from the military and became a teacher. She spent her remaining years telling children, both human and alien, about the war. She taught them that strength was not about how hard you could hit, but about what you chose to protect. Admiral Cho Sung-mi returned to Earth and never left again. She had seen enough of space to last a lifetime. She spent her final years in a small house by the ocean, watching the waves and remembering the friends she had lost. Sergeant Han Di-woo stayed in space, helping to train the new galactic defense force that included soldiers from every species. He never married, never settled down. The galaxy was his home now, and he would protect it as long as he could. And Admiral Park Tiho, he disappeared one day, leaving behind a simple note, "Going fishing. Do not disturb unless the galaxy is ending again." The Velari beacon, the ancient relic that had started everything, was placed in a museum on Earth. Children from across the galaxy came to see it, to learn about the day when a desperate species had sent a call for help and awakened the wolves. They had expected monsters, they had received a family. And humanity, the children of a death world who had spent thousands of years fighting themselves, finally found something worth fighting for. Everyone else,